يعيش العالم حالة مزرية تحفه المخاطر من كل حدب وصوب، ومع تصاعد التوترات على المستويات المحلية والإقليمية والدولية، يواجه العالم حاجة ماسة للسلام. ومنذ ظهور هذه التوترات أطل على الساحة العالمية صوت متميز يحمل بريق الأمل للإنسانية، يدعوها في المحافل الدولية لإنشاء السلام فيما بينها، وأن تسعى جادة للتعرف على خالقها. في هذه الأمسية سيلقي حضرة ميرزا مسرور أحمد أيده الله تعالى بنصره العزيز بمجمع مسجد بيت الفتوح الخطاب الرئيسي للندوة الوطنية للسلام بالمملكة المتحدة. سيحضر الندوة ما يزيد على 800 ضيف للاستماع إلى كلمة حضرته التي سيلقي من خلالها الضوء على الأزمة العالمية الحالية، وذلك في ضوء التعاليم الإسلامية الصحيحة. ابقوا معنا على الفضائية في هذه الأمسية الرائعة لمتابعة هذا الحدث المرموق الذي سيشارك فيه ضيوف من شتى الثقافات والديانات والانتماءات. نيابة عن الجماعة الإسلامية الأحمدية بالمملكة المتحدة، نرحب بحضراتكم في ندوة السلام الوطنية لسنة 2019.
Assalamu alaikum. Please be seated.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 16th National Peace Symposium of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community UK. We start now with the recitation of the Holy Quran in Arabic by Mr. Danial Tasawwur Ahmed and its English translation by Mr. Farhad Ahmed.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأوفوا بعهد الله إذا عاهدتم ولا تنقضوا الأيمان بعد بعد توكيدها وقد جعلتم الله عليكم كفيلا إن الله يعلم ما تفعلون ولا تكونوا كالتي نقضت غزلها من بعد قوة أنكاثا تتخذون أيمانكم دخلا بينكم أن تكون أمة هي أربى من أمة إنما يبلوكم الله به وليبينن لكم يوم القيامة ما كنتم فيه تختلفون. جزاكم الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The verses recited before you are from Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verses 91 to 93. The translation is as follows. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan, the accursed. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the ever merciful. Verily, Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others, and giving like kindred, and forbids indecency, manifest evil, and wrongful transgression. He admonished you that you may take heed, and fulfill the covenant of Allah when you have made. And break not the oaths after making them firm, while you have made Allah your surety. Certainly, Allah knows what you do. And be not like unto her, who, after having made it strong, breaks her yarn into pieces. You make your oaths a means of deceit between you, for fear lest one people become more powerful than another. Surely Allah tries you therewith, and on the day of resurrection, He will make clear to you that wherein you differed.
Thank you. I would now like to invite our National President, Mr. Rafiq Ahmed Hayat, to give the welcome remarks. Mr. Rafiq Hayat.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Most beloved Zur, your worshipfuls, your excellencies, respected parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Welcome to the 16th annual symposium. The theme of this year is the critical need for peace. The world is passing through grim times. The rise of nationalism, the increased threat of terrorism, and endless injustice towards nations and fellow human beings has resulted in strife and global unrest on a large scale. It is frightening that minor political incidents between nations has the potential to trigger nuclear conflict. It is clear that the world lacks leadership to direct us towards peace and away from conflict. Time and again, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, has highlighted the need to tackle extremism at its grassroots and to engage communities and nations across the globe and highlight in no uncertain terms that a concentrated effort is now more than ever required for the establishment of lasting peace. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community was founded in 1889 by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace and blessings be upon him, whom we accept as the promised Messiah and the reformer of the time, and whose arrival was prophesied and awaited by most major world faiths. His main objective was to revive the true peaceful teaching of Islam and to bring faiths together under one umbrella in order to achieve lasting peace. His whole life revolved around this purpose, to establish peace not only amongst people of the same faith, but with people from different and all points of view. Since the passing of the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has been truly blessed to have the institution of the divine guided Khilafat, the successor to the promised Messiah. And through prayer and wisdom, the Khalifa unites the community, and this community is now established in 210 countries of the world. The Khalifa of Islam, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, leads us in our worldwide campaign for peace, through which we provide food shelters, education, health services, disaster relief, clean water, electricity, and much more to people all over the world. And it is under the guidance of our Khalifa that we engage in dialogue, train our youth to serve their country and to serve humanity, where we teach and promote the values loyalty, respect, and peace. This is indeed the path to peace. His Holiness is a man of peace and has delivered keynote addresses at the parliaments across the world, including the UK, the US, and the EU. He regularly meets heads of states, presidents, prime ministers, as well as faith leaders, urging the need for justice and peace. There could not be a more important message for the world today. As such, since being elected as Khalifa, His Holiness has led worldwide campaigns to convey the peaceful message of Islam to the whole world. Under his leadership, national branches of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Committee have launched campaigns that reflect the true teaching of Islam. It is through such gatherings as today that we can sow the seeds of peace in this world. And we are very blessed this evening that despite his extremely busy schedule, His Holiness has come here tonight to address the gathering as the keynote speaker. I take this opportunity once again to welcome you all to the 16th Peace Conference, and I hope and pray that this evening will prove to be inspiring and very special evening for you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would now like to introduce our guest speaker for the Peace Symposium, and that is the Most Reverend Kevin MacDonald, who is the Archbishop Emeritus of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Southwark.
Your Holiness, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Although I'm a guest speaker, I'm only to speak for a few minutes, but it's a great pleasure for me, and I think it's very appropriate, that on behalf of all the guests here this evening, I say a big thank you to the Ahmadiyya community for this initiative, which is quite unusual and different and imaginative, bringing together people of different religions, different faiths, people in the public and private sector, people of different walks of life, to reflect on peace, because peace is an issue for all of us, or perhaps one could say more precisely, the lack of peace is an issue for all of us. And as has already been said, there is a particular timeliness about this year's Peace Symposium. We think of the prevalence of knife crime, which is causing such perplexity and such concern in this city. We think of the Brexit crisis and the incredible animosity and resentment and anger and all that it has unleashed. And of course, we think of the wider world, particularly places like Yemen and Syria, and the ongoing appalling suffering of so many of our fellow men and women. And so simply to have an event which focuses on peace and puts peace at the centre is particularly important. Particularly, I think, the Ahmadiyya faith focuses on peace, and it is right, I think, that religions, faiths, step up at this moment. We live in a time when there is profound unease and unhappiness with the political culture in which we live. And it is particularly appropriate, therefore, that people of faith step up, particularly also since we live in a time of great religious illiteracy, where people seem to feel free to pontificate about religion while knowing absolutely nothing about it. And one particular thing I would say is this, that peace in one form or another is a fundamental feature of all religions, whether it's the Eastern religions or the West Asian religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And what I think is particularly important is the relationship between inner peace and peace in the world. Peace in the world is not something that can be created by negotiation or by force. The situation of conflict can only change if people change, if people are people of peace. And I've been involved in a number of conferences in which people, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians and others, have explored the way in which finding peace, discovering peace through prayer, contemplation, through religious practice, changes us as people. And that's the crucial thing, because if we're not transformed and become people of love, of peace, of concern, and it doesn't happen naturally. It's worked on, we would say, by the grace of God, but certainly through prayer. The alternative to that is that our actions, our responses, what we do, is fueled and motivated by aggression, anger, jealousies, all the things that are part and parcel of being human, but which are in need of transformation, which are in need of change. And so I thank the Ahmadiyya community for drawing attention to the centrality of peace, for inviting people of different faiths and none to come together. And I hope we can come together around this conviction that there can only be peace in the world if there is peace within us. That's where it's only from within us that that peace can come. So I hope in saying that, I'm speaking to the spirit of this gathering, because I think this is an invitation to focus on peace, to put peace centre stage, and to ask the question of what I can do as a person in terms of changing myself, changing my society, changing my community to bring peace in the world. So thank you very much, Your Holiness, and members of the Ahmadiyya community for convening this gathering, which I hope will be a blessing not only for the people who are here, but to all the people who we will meet in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
جزاكم
Thank you, Archbishop Kevin MacDonald. We now come to the part of the symposium for the presentation of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Prize for the Advancement of Peace, and I would invite Mr. Rafiq Hayat to introduce the recipient of the Peace Prize for this year.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. The Ahmadiyya Muslim Prize for the Advancement of Peace was launched in 2008 and is awarded in recognition of an individual or an organization's contribution to peace. As it was announced during our recent annual convention, the 2018 Peace Prize was awarded to Dr. Fred Mednick, the founder of Teachers Without Borders. Launched in 2000, the mission of Teachers Without Borders is to connect teachers to information and each other in order to close the educational divide, and based on the premise that the teachers are community change agents and key drivers of global development. Initiatives include education in emergencies, girls' education, peace and human rights education, bullying, ICT in education, and children-friendly spaces. Teachers Without Borders program and resources have been adopted by teachers and communities worldwide, including Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Brazil, Brunei, Cameroon, China, and Ghana, amongst many other countries, including United States of America. All Teachers Without Borders programs are conceived and led by teachers leaders. Programs are designed to be adaptable, adoptable, affordable, and accessible so that the local leaders can ensure relevance of the communities they serve. Today, Teachers Without Borders members represent 171 countries, and its social networks are flourishing. They are a local action organization on a global scale, and it is completely free. The founder, Dr. Fred Mednick, is a former English teacher and a high school principal. Dr. Mednick is fond of saying that brains are evenly distributed around the world, but education is not. However, if mobilized, those brains build the momentum of a virtuous circle and a national resource. After all, a country is only as vital and sustainable as its teachers. We are delighted and honored to present this year's Peace Prize to him and the Teachers Without Borders, and I request His Holiness to present this year's Peace Prize to Dr. Fred Mednick.
Before we invite Dr. Fred Mednick to speak, we have a short video presentation of his work.
Teachers Without Borders is an international organisation launched in 2000 with a mission to connect teachers to information and each other in order to close the education divide, and based on the premise that teachers are community change agents and key catalysts of global development priorities. The organisation was founded by Dr. Fred Mednick. Teachers Without Borders runs 4 key flagship programs: Emergency Education, Peace Education Initiative, Girls Education, and Certificate of Teaching Mastery. The Emergency Education Program works with teachers on preparedness and planning to avoid crisis or lessen their impacts, education amidst emergencies, and in the reconstruction phase. This program was initiated after the 2008 earthquake in the Sichuan region of China and engaged and supported teachers in Haiti. The program also supports emergency relief, reconstruction and recovery efforts in areas hit by natural disasters, such as the 2010 floods in Pakistan. The Peace Education Initiative helps teachers promote peace in their classrooms and communities. Girls' Education Program addresses 4 central themes: access, education in emergencies, public health and empowerment. The organisation addresses these 4 themes by connecting global educators to NGOs working in the field, offering a free and low-fee course. Educating Girls is in partnership with Johns Hopkins University. The Certificate of Teaching Mastery consists of 5 courses that help teachers improve their professional knowledge, classroom practice, and leadership skills. This program has been developed throughout sub-Saharan Africa as well as Mexico and Peru. Teachers Without Borders programs and resources have been adopted by teachers and communities worldwide, including Bangladesh, Brazil, and Brunei, to name but a few. Today, Teachers Without Borders members represent 171 countries, and its social networks are flourishing globally. And it's just through their works that they have received the Champions of African Education Award in 2010 and the 2018 Luxembourg Peace Prize for Outstanding Peace Education, and now the Ahmadiyya Muslim Peace Prize for Advancement for Peace.
Thank you. Dr. Fred Mednick.
Assalamu alaikum. Your Holiness, man of peace, esteemed members of the Ahmadiyya community, organizers of the National Peace Symposium, colleagues, friends, and I hope fellow teachers. I'm deeply honored and privileged to receive this award. And I do so on behalf of Teachers Without Borders. We are really moved and profoundly grateful for your commitment to peacemaking through education. As was said before, teachers are the largest professionally trained group of people in the world. They know who's sick, they know who's missing, they know who's orphaned by AIDS, they know who is susceptible to the scourge of human trafficking, or who may be forced into military conscription and brainwashing. Teachers are a development army in one's own backyard, and they yield powerful lessons and weapons indeed: literacy and numeracy, critical thinking and curiosity, learning and love. Their voices, however, are not often heard. 20 years ago, my organization recognized the converging lines of education, connectivity, and development. Because, as was said, brains are evenly distributed around the world, and education is not, and we need to depend upon those brains. We sought then, as we do today, to connect those teachers to information and each other, but to transform the teaching profession into something that connects to human development and human welfare. So from the very beginning, this organization started, perfect strangers reached out. And they reached out across those borders, motivated and sustained, not by any sense of self-aggrandizement, and certainly not for money, but by a deeply resonant song of reciprocity and hospitality and human agency. Many of these members risked their lives to hear that song. They convened teachers from regions in conflict in 5 continents. They created education centers for gang members and prisoners and refugees and child soldiers and the marginalized. Following a genocidal act in northern Nigeria, it took only 3 people to launch a radio show. And that radio show was the voice of teachers. And it was filled with stories of peacemaking and love, just 3 people. And it reached 1.7 million listeners a week because it is a resonant song for everyone. They connected earthquake science and safety for the most seismically vulnerable communities in the world so that children can learn in peace, and those child-friendly spaces at great risk during natural and national disasters, and they do this as volunteers. The teachers educate where there are no schools, or when schools have been ransacked or destroyed or transformed into sham polling stations. They find ways to teach, even when thugs in pickup trucks wave black flags or wear white hoods in a savage attempt to shred any kind of fragile social contract we have. And today, as a rising tide of xenophobia and hate speech attempts to dismantle global agreements and infiltrate social networks with these pernicious messages of violence against the other, teachers step up to affirm the values of civil discourse and inclusion. And when asked why they do this, they say that education, like peace itself, is a fundamental human right. For them, all this work is an act of joyful restorative justice. At the launch of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 70 years ago, Eleanor Roosevelt posed a very critical, important challenge. She asked, where, after all, do universal human rights begin? Her answer, in the small places, close to home. So small and so close to home that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. And unless these rights have meaning there, she said, they will have little meaning anywhere. So those small places, for me, for my organization, have always been classrooms. There, in those many democracies and laboratories of hope, the education of girls lifts everyone. There, in those small places, children learn to protect and cherish their local environment, and by doing so, they learn to protect and cherish each other. It's there, when children have faith in one another, they can learn respect for all faiths. There, in those small places, lessons in hygiene bolster an entire community's immune system. There, the arts cultivate courage and possibility, and in those small places, children practice how to address small conflicts, and so they grow up to learn how to mend and repair the world. My organization is 19, 20 years old. We have a long way to go. All of us have a long way to go. But with this award, Your Holiness, the Ahmadiyya community has heard the teacher's voice and has heard the teacher's song and has made visible those precious small places. And I can only say here today, honored by the hospitality and warmth and openness of this community, it is a special honor to receive this award, and we shall do our best, inshallah, to reach each teacher we can on this planet, and even more teachers and more children in those small places everywhere on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fred Mednick. I am now honoured to invite the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, to deliver the keynote address.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, ever merciful. All the distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace and blessing of Allah be upon you all. Each year, The Ahmadiyya Muslim community hosts this peace symposium in which current issues and the overall state of the world are analyzed. And in my address, I seek to present answers to these contemporary issues in light of the teaching of Islam. In terms of what impact this event has on the wider world, I have said before that I do not know. However, regardless of its effect, we shall never give up our efforts to promote peace and justice, and certainly, I'm sure, all of you share our ardent desire for true and long-lasting peace to be established in the world. Indeed, I am sure all of you hope to see an end to the many conflicts and wars that have blighted the world in recent times, and for a peaceful world to emerge in which all people and all nations live amicably and fulfill the rights of one another. Yet, the tragic and devastating truth is that each year, instead of pulling back from war and conflict, the opposite is proving true. Rivalries are intensifying, new battle lines are being drawn, whilst existing hostilities show little sign of abating. Though we are all aware that we are passing through difficult times, most people do not realize the extent to which the relations between certain nations have deteriorated and how potentially disastrous the consequences could prove to be. For example, in a recent column published by Bloomberg Business Week, the journalist Peter Coy writes, "Nuclear war gets surprisingly little attention considering there are enough nukes to end human civilization in hours." The reason to pay attention is that arms control, especially between the US and Russia, has broken down. A fresh nuclear arms race appeared to be taking shape. As for what anyone can do, arms control moves forward in response to public pressure when humanity speaks louder than arms merchants and bellicose world leaders. In his article, he also quotes a senior fellow of the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, Nikolai Sokov, who warns, "All signs point in the direction of a serious combined nuclear conventional arms race in Europe." The rest of the article reinforces the point that another global arms race has begun and that the threat of nuclear war should not be underestimated. In recent days, the world witnessed a sudden escalation in tension between India and Pakistan. Both countries are nuclear powers, and both have built alliances with other nations, whether openly or in secret, which mean that the potential consequences of a war would be extensive and far-reaching. I've expressed my view on many occasions that the leaders of some of the nuclear powers are trigger-happy and appear not to appreciate the truly grave consequences of nuclear warfare. Not only do such weapons have the power to annihilate the countries targeted, but also have the potential to destroy the peace and stability of the entire world. Thus, it is imperative that nations and their leaders do not focus only on their own national interests, but consider what is best for the world at large. Dialogue with other nations and communities is vital, and each party should work together with a spirit of tolerance and with the shared objective of developing true and sustainable peace in the world. In a recent interview with Spiegel Online, the former foreign minister of Germany, Sigmar Gabriel, has warned of underestimating the dangers posed by the current geopolitical situation, and he compares the current political state to the circumstances of the world in 1945 and 1989. The former German foreign minister said, "The world is changing dramatically. The old West has broken apart. It is a drastic change from the past 70 years when we could depend on the US as a leading nation. We are going through a fight for European sovereignty in a completely changed world." Similarly, in a New York Times article, the former leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, writes that following the recent suspension of the INF Treaty by the United States and Russia, a new nuclear arms race has begun. Mr. Gorbachev writes, "A new arms race has been announced. The INF Treaty is not the first victim of the militarization of world affairs. In 2002, the United States withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missiles Treaty. This year, from the Iran nuclear deal, military expenditures have soared to astronomical levels and keep rising." Warning about the risk of a nuclear war, Ms. Gorbachev writes, "There will be no winner in a war of all against all, particularly if it ends in a nuclear war, and that is a possibility that cannot be ruled out. An unrelenting arms race, international tensions, hostility, and universal mistrust will only increase the risk. Hence, expert commentators and experienced politicians are reaching the conclusion that nuclear war no longer remains a remote and distant prospect, but is a growing threat that can no longer be discounted." If we glance at just a few of today's pressing issues, it is clear that the world is heading in an ominous direction. During the past year, the United States claimed with a degree of confidence that it was close to securing an historic peace deal with North Korea. But in recent days, it has become clear that nothing of substance has been achieved. Conflict in the Middle East continues to rage. Over almost a decade, Syria has been ravaged by bloodshed and torn asunder. It is said that the civil war is now edging towards an end, but what has the past decade achieved except the death of hundreds of thousands of innocent people and the displacement of millions of others. Nothing positive has emerged, and the future remains uncertain and precarious as tensions rise between nations who have their own vested interests tied into the future of Syria. On one side, Russia and Turkey are aligning, whilst on the other side, the United States and Saudi Arabia are joining together and are ratcheting up pressure on Iran and seeking further sanctions against them. Political experts are openly expressing that the objective of these nations is to dominate the Middle East. Another flashpoint and source of conflict are the worsening relations between Turkey and the Kurdish groups who seek autonomy. Thus, the world is stuck in a vicious cycle of conflict and counter-conflict as rivalries ferment and hatreds become ever more deeply entrenched. No one knows where such issues will finally lead us or how horrific the consequences will prove to be. What I have mentioned is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many other issues of concern that threaten the peace and well-being of the world. For example, it is said that the terrorist group Daesh is on the verge of collapse and that their so-called Khilafat is finished. Yet, experts also warn that though Daesh has lost its territory, its hateful ideology persists, and its members who have survived are now scattering and could eventually regroup and perpetrate attacks in Europe or elsewhere. Furthermore, nationalism has reared its ugly head again, and far-right parties are gaining popularity across the Western world. They may not have secured outright political majorities, but unless justice at all levels of society prevails, they will continue to gain support. One of the core reasons underpinning their popularity has been widespread immigration, which has caused resentment and a belief that existing indigenous citizens are being shortchanged in order to fund and support immigrants. I have spoken on this issue at length in the past, and so I do not need to go over old ground. Suffice to say that if genuine efforts are made to cultivate peace and to help all countries achieve their potential, the desperation of people to flee their homes would automatically subside. All that most people desire is the ability to provide for their families, and it is only when such opportunities are denied to them that they seek to leave their homes in search of a better life. Accordingly, the long-term solution to the immigration crisis has to be to establish peace in war-torn countries and to help the local people who have been forced to endure lives of misery and danger to live peacefully. In the short term, where refugees or asylum seekers come to the West due to the prevailing political or religious conditions in their own countries, they should be treated with dignity and respect. At the same time, whatever support they are given should not be at the expense of existing citizens. Immigrants should be strongly encouraged to enter employment as soon as possible rather than living off benefits for long periods. They should work hard, seek to stand upon their own 2 feet, and contribute positively to their new society. Otherwise, if they are continually funded by taxpayers' money, it will inevitably lead to grievances. Indeed, it is my belief that the underlying cause of most resentment in society tends to be economic and financial frustration. Certain groups take advantage of such anxiety by laying the blame at the feet of immigrants or at the followers of religion and incite sentiments of hatred towards them. Thus, an impression has developed in Europe that Asians, Africans, and particularly Muslim immigrants are a threat to society. In the United States, there are similar fears regarding Muslims and also Hispanic seeking to enter the country through Mexico. Nonetheless, I firmly believe that if the major powers set aside their own vested interests and strive earnestly towards improving the economic conditions of poorer nations and treat them with sympathy and respect, such issues would never arise. Here in the United Kingdom, there is currently a great deal of uncertainty regarding Brexit and the UK's future relationship with the European Union. I made my own views on this topic clear during an address at the European Parliament in 2012. While addressing, I said you should make all possible efforts to preserve this unity by honoring each other's rights. The fears and worries held by members of the general public must be removed. I also said, remember that the strength of Europe lies in its remaining united and together as one. Such unity will not only benefit you here in Europe, but at a global level will be the means for this continent to maintain its strength and influence. In my speech 7 years ago, I focused upon the importance of removing the fears of public about immigrants and emphasizing the benefits of unity. However, people's concerns were not adequately addressed, and so increasingly people across Europe have come to question the benefit of the European Union. The starkest example is, of course, Brexit, but in many European countries, such as Italy and Spain, far-right or nationalist, even in Germany, nationalist parties are gaining popularity and winning seats at the political table through which they are striving to further weaken the European Union and pursuing an anti-immigrant agenda. Hence, where I had hoped for greater unity in Europe, the past few years have witnessed increased division and turmoil. Why have such frustration come to the fore? They are derived from economic difficulties and a failure of governments to act with justice and to protect the rights of their citizens. My own view remains that international cooperation is a positive and unifying force for good. Thus, at the European Parliament, I also said, from an Islamic perspective, we should strive for the entire world to unite together. In terms of currency, the world should be united. In terms of free business and trade, the world should be united. And in terms of freedom of movement and immigration, cohesive and practical policies should be developed so that the world can become united. Consequently, the Islamic viewpoint is that peace can best be achieved through unity. Yet, regretfully, instead of uniting, we are seeking separation and prioritizing our individual interests over the collective interests of the world. I believe that such policies will and already are undermining the world's peace and security. According to Islam, for peace to prevail, justice between nations is a prerequisite. Where countries face difficulties, other nations should seek to help them selflessly without pushing their own agendas. For example, the Holy Quran states that if there is a war or conflict between two parties, other nations should mediate impartially and seek to bring about a peaceful settlement. However, if one side continues to be unjust and does not move towards peaceful outcome, then the other nations should unite together to stop the aggressor. Once the aggressive nations or party refrain from wrongdoing, Islam categorically instructs that revenge should not be sought through unjust sanctions or by plundering their resources. However, time and again, we have seen examples of countries that have intervened in war-torn nations or given aid to deprived countries on the pretext of bringing peace, but have attached strings that enable them to take control of the weaker country's resources. Rather than being content with their own wealth, powerful countries seek to assert their control over weaker nations. As I have said, the root cause of frustration and resulting hostility, whether in the East or the West, is economic injustice, and so it is essential that a concerted effort is made to bridge the economic divide amongst nations and their people. Furthermore, we must unite in our efforts to end all forms of extremism and prejudice, whether religious, racial, or of any other kind. Where it is clear that people are suffering and that their leaders are not protecting their rights, those international organizations founded for the sake of preserving the peace of the world, notably the United Nations, should exercise lawful and proportionate pressure in order to defend the rights of law-abiding citizens and to push for peace and justice. In terms of Islam, you may wonder what it can teach us about bringing peace in the world, when much of the instability and conflict in recent years has centered around Muslim countries. Yet, the sorry state of those nations is because they have moved far away from the true teachings of Islam. To get an accurate portrayal of Islamic governance and leadership, we should look to the era of the founder of Islam, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. After the Holy Prophet, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, migrated to the city of Medina, he formed a covenant with the Jewish people, whereby the Muslims and the Jewish citizens were to live together peacefully and with a spirit of mutual sympathy, tolerance, and equity. The covenant proved to be a magnificent charter of human rights and governance and ensured peace between the different communities living in Medina. According to its terms, all people, regardless of their faith or ethnicity, were bound to respect the rights of one another. Freedom of belief and freedom of conscience were cornerstones of that treaty. Unity underpinned the agreement, whereby if Medina was attacked or threatened, the Muslims and Jews would join forces to defend it defend it together and as one. Further, each community had the right to solve their internal issues according to their respective beliefs and customs. History testifies to the fact that the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, upheld every aspect of that agreement. As immigrants, the Muslims sought to serve their new society and to respect the rights of all citizens of Medina. It was an outstanding example of successful integration and a manifestation of a peaceful and tolerant multicultural society. The Treaty of Medina was based directly upon the teachings of the Holy Quran. For example, the Holy Quran states in chapter 16, verse 91, that verily Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others, and giving like kindred. Thus, the Holy Quran has outlined 3 levels of engagement with other people and other communities. The first and minimum level is of justice, whereby the Holy Quran advocates the need to treat everyone fairly and equitably. The standards of justice required by Islam are outlined in chapter 4, verse 136 of the Holy Quran, which states, O ye who believe, be strict in observing justice, and be witnesses for Allah, even though it be against yourselves or against parents and kindred, whether he be rich or poor. Allah is more regardful of them both than regardful of them both than you are. Therefore, follow not low desires so that you may be able to act equitably. And if you conceal the truth or evade it, then remember that Allah is well aware of what you do. Hence, according to the Quran, justice requires that a person is willing to testify even against himself and his most loved ones in order to guard and protect the truth. The second level of engagement advocated by the Holy Quran is that a person should not only be just, but should go beyond it by doing good to others, by manifesting generosity and forgiveness. As I have already mentioned, the Holy Quran teaches that once you have successfully stopped an aggressive nation from inflicting further cruelties, you should not seek revenge or impose hardship upon it. Rather, you should seek to help them build up their economy and infrastructure. Where this will help them, it will also help you in the long term. If those countries who have been centers of war or division are enabled to prosper economically, they will no longer harbor frustration or bear hatred for other countries, nor will their people be forced to migrate. This is the wisdom underpinning the Islamic teaching of going beyond basic justice and exhibiting kindness and compassion. The third level of engagement taught by the Holy Quran is to treat others in the same way that a mother treats her child, which is the most selfless form of love, as it is rendered without any expectation of reward. To treat others with benevolent spirit is not easy, but this should be our constant aspiration. Ultimately, to bring about peace, whether in Muslim nations or at a broader international level, it is necessary that at the very minimum, the demands of justice are fulfilled by governments, so that all people are given their due rights and that selfish vested interests give way to what is fair and right. Furthermore, international institutions such as the United Nations should treat each country equally rather than bend to the will of certain powers. Thus, this is the means of peace. This is the roadmap to a better world. This is the only way we can prevent mankind from sliding further towards grave peril. With these few words, it is my heartfelt prayer that may Allah the Almighty enable true peace to emerge, and may the long shadows of war and conflict that hover above us be replaced by blue skies of peace and prosperity. I pray for an end to the frustrations and deprivation that have plagued the lives of countless people and have fueled devastating wars and grievances across the world. Instead of seeking to dominate others and assert their own rights, I pray that nations and their leaders come to see the benefit of fulfilling the rights of one another. Instead of laying the blame for the world's problem on certain religion or people of particular ethnicities, I pray that we show tolerance of each other's belief and customs and value the diversity within our societies. I pray that we come to see the best in humanity and use each other's strength and skills to build a better world for our children and to cultivate lasting peace in society. Surely the alternatives do not bear thinking about. Earlier I quoted several experts who warned of nuclear warfare and of a spiraling global arms race. Those articles and many others give weight to the belief that the world is hurtling towards a titanic catastrophe, the like of which mankind has never seen before, and one that will be impossible to contain. According to some estimates, the effects of a nuclear war could reach 90% of the world. Furthermore, if there is a nuclear war, we will not only be destroying the world today, but we will also be leaving behind a lasting trail of destruction and misery for our future generations. Hence, we must pause and reflect on the consequences of our actions. We should not consider any issue or conflict, whether within a country or at an international level, to be insignificant. Whether we are dealing with economic issues or immigration or any other crisis, we must show tolerance and strive to break down the barriers that divide us. We should utilize all of our energies and faculties to pursue peace by seeking to end every conflict amicably through dialogue and mutual compromise, and by fulfilling the rights of one another. May Allah the Almighty enable us to do so. Ameen. With these words, I would like to thank all of our guests for joining us here this evening. Thank you very much.
Before we bring the formal program to an end, we will end the program with silent prayer. His Holiness will lead us in silent prayer. We pray by raising our hands. You may join us in any manner you feel comfortable.
Please, silent prayer. Ameen.
you get a sense from him about his sincerity and his purity of vision. There is no hypocrisy. There is only a real sense of love.
It was a very welcome message. In a very busy world that we all occupy, it's nice to take a moment actually to reflect on some slightly more serious issues, and today's event was certainly an opportunity to do that.
I think I was very impressed with him by how on the ball he is, by how up to date he is with the whole geopolitical situation.
At the end of the day, peace is more important than anything else. And if you understand people, and I always say respect and good manners brings peace.
The more people talk together, the more they work together, and the more they understand each other, then more chance we're going to have peace in the world and more understanding amongst people.
This evening has been first class in terms of meeting people and just exchanging ideas. It's wonderful.